Welcome to my podcast story, the show where podcasters share the real journey behind their voices, from their first mic check to their biggest milestones. Every episode reveals the lessons, challenges, and breakthrough that shape a podcast star's journey. I'm your host, Wisdom Okonkwo, and I can't wait for you to hear today's story. Tell me your name and the name of your podcast.
My name is NaRon Tillman. I also have two other podcasts, One Ministries Network, O&Y Online, which is our new baby that we just started.
Wow, how and why? I guess we'll start with the new baby. Like, how new is this latest podcast?
We're 3 episodes in, 6 episodes recorded. That'll be going up weekly, and it's because of this new landscape with AI and the digital platforms that's happening around us that me and another friend of mine wanted to inform people on how to be present. So how and why online, how to stick your digital blueprint, whether you're a business owner or a podcaster, understanding what's happening around us and how we can be prepared.
Wow. And we'll come back to this latest podcast, but I just want us to go to the very beginning. The oldest podcast, how old is it?
Mhm.
And is it the first podcast you've ever, your first attempt at podcasting?
Yes, it's about 6 years old. We have over 400 episodes,
Wow.
close to 200,000 downloads. And it's an interview-based podcast, and it actually got started because of a friend of mine, my partner, Phil Kennard. He made me start it. I had no choice.
Oh, what do you mean he made you start? Can you narrate the story for us?
We were at a Met game. I got on my Met hat. That's a team based in New York, in Flushing, Queens, and I grew up in New York, and the Mets was losing, and we was sitting. We was like at eating at a concession stand, and having we started talking. It was like partially raining too, so baseball games when you're sitting in you get wet. So we was under the thing, so we were kind of secure. And then we just was having the conversations about various things, and he was like, "You need to start a podcast." I didn't really know too much about podcasts. I was a traditional radio listener, and he said, "You need to start a podcast." And I was like, "Nobody want to hear me." And he went and brought the equipment, and we started a podcast in his basement. And not knowing what podcasting was about, not understanding topics of influence or understanding any of the things that I do know now as a veteran podcast host, we started. And for anyone, just starting is the hardest part.
Yeah. Oh. What's the kind of the niche of that podcast? What's the podcast about? The first podcast?
It's an interview based podcast, and it's about victory. It's about overcoming obstacles in business. I interview people who are authors and yoga instructors, thought leaders in every industry, but I'm more interested not in exactly what they're offering the world, but the story behind it. It's kind of like what you do, but it's just for business. And we dive into neuroscience, we dive into marketing, we dive into finances, we dive into anything that's going to help move the world forward. And these are people who have done wonderful, wonderful work. And I'm always learning, but I'm also able to share my input and my wisdom too. So I really appreciate what it is that we bring to the world through that podcast.
Yeah. At the very first attempt of the podcast, I'm curious to know why this podcast, right? I mean, you could have said every other thing. What would you say? Why? I guess the question is, what influenced the decision to say, okay, this is the type of podcast we're going to do, going to interview businesses, and people to share their stories and victories. And yeah, I mean, podcasting, there's so many other things you could have done with it.
Well, it aligned with the name, right? So Walk in Victory. And then I took a class during COVID about podcasting. It was about podcast hosting. But I said, if I can become a better understanding about host, then I can better position the podcast to fit with host. And one of the things that in the class, one of the very first things that I learned was it was a 3-day challenge, podcast hosting challenge. And one of the very first things that I learned was topics of influence. So what are the topics of influence that hosts want to discuss? So I flipped that and said, what are the topics of influence that I want our podcast to be centered around? So our first tagline was, walk in victory, we set you at the feet of the masters, right? So what does a master look like? Someone who has overcome any kind of limiting beliefs, overcome any kind of obstacles to continue to push and build their businesses forward. You don't have to necessarily be a business owner. We have authors, we have resilient stories, but most of our guests usually are in industries where they're leaders in the industry. We have some executives that come on and talk about their companies that they're leading in some kind of role, because the whole purpose of walking in victory is that you have to be victorious in some kind of way. Yeah,
Yeah.
we've interviewed actors and actresses, but there's still people that have contributed in their industry. And I'll put it that way. People that have contributed in their industry in some form or fashion.
You mentioned that you started the podcast with your partner in the basement.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
I'm
we
curious to
started.
know what was the first episode like? What went well and what went wrong?
I still have all of the episodes up. So if anyone ever wanted to archive, we didn't have really good mics. We didn't really understand how to set up everything, and um, we were purchasing time through Libsyn. So we had limited time that we can do podcasts. My first podcast episode was Mama, I Started a Podcast. And it was just really all over the place. It was just me talking about what the podcast was going to be about. But I really didn't know what the podcast was going to be about. So,
Yeah. It was a question of let's
um,
just see
uh,
where it goes.
yeah, that's just, so what I started to do was, it was around the time when Trump first got elected. Trump won presidency, so I would talk about politics. I would just really all over the place. And early on in our podcasting journey, which was very significant, we got a small podcast production deal. And when we got that production deal, it made me as an entrepreneur change the way I viewed what it was that we were doing, because I said there must be something here for us to be able to get this deal. And I said I have to take it a little bit more seriously. Not that I wasn't taking it seriously. I was really looking at the vanity metrics. But what I learned quickly is that the better I am at curating conversation, the better our listenership would. And
Yeah.
I started to take that stuff real seriously. We started to take seriously our presentations, the mics that we use. In fact, I'm looking to purchase a new mic again now, because the technology just keeps getting better. And all of those things that I would not have necessarily considered before, I started to really consider.
Yeah. You mentioned I can like to call it kind of a breakthrough moment, right? Where you got a production deal and you realize that, oh, wow, this is huge. Like there's something like there's something that can you zoom in on that production deal? How did you get the production deal? Did you reach out to the company or the company reach out to you? I'd love to know.
They reached out to me. So I'm the type of person, I answer every phone call. Like, some people don't answer phone calls when they don't notice the number and all that other stuff. If I don't want to talk to somebody, I'll just let them know I'm not interested in talking to them. And my car was being serviced. So I was actually walking to the bus stop and I got a phone call from a Connecticut number, and it happens to be the marketing department at Spreaker. And they were saying that they wanted us to move our podcast from where it was, and it was going to go in the back end. They had the permission, and they was going to give us all of these features: a small budget for marketing, unlimited recording time, our podcast would be monetized. You know what I mean? That monetization is only cents to $1, but still is better than what we were paying for. So we went
Okay.
from paying for time um, to not paying at all. only able to do 2.5 podcasts a month, half-hour shows, because of the time that they allotted the time with they allotted time with you know
Hours.
yeah, hours, but it was like gigabytes. This is how many gigabytes that you would have, and then that
Oh,
gigabytes turned into hours. Yeah, yeah.
oh,
So,
okay.
um, and what we figured out is that that's really like a half-hour show. So we had to make sure that we was on the clock, because what you didn't want to do is be in the middle of a show and you ran out of time for the month, right?
Yeah,
And the time didn't
yeah,
roll over. So this is where I started, and this is where we were at. So once I got that call, unlimited amount of podcasts, which is why we produce podcasts now. I'm looking to actually produce more podcasts, because I have some ideas as to what I want to bring to the marketplace through our production company, Principal Matters Production. Um, and uh, that's neither here nor there. That's a whole nother conversation. But uh, so we had all of these things available to us, and I was like, I have to take it more serious as a business, because somebody is investing in me. And
yeah,
that gave me confidence as a podcaster. It gave me confidence knowing that I was doing something that someone heard.
yeah. The crazy thing for me is that that thing you just mentioned about the gigabits being limited by how much the length of time. They still do that thing till now. Like I remember like 2-3 months ago when I was like trying to do a tour of all the podcast hosts. I still saw that they determine how the number of episodes you could release by. That's what you just mentioned, and I'm like, wow, like there are other alternatives out there that will give you unlimited as long as you don't get up to this download. Some will even give you yeah, basically only me. For me, I'm still wondering why they chose to do it that way. Because as a beginner podcast, and you don't really have a lot of persons listening to you, so why would we just be spending a lot of a lot of money on storage when you could just okay, how do I put it? Like for example, Captivate, they give you unlimited downloads. Sorry, not downloads. It's capped at 30,000 downloads. They give you unlimited storage, unlimited podcast, everything basically unlimited. And the thing, it makes sense that if you're getting a podcast of up to 30,000 downloads, even though you're not making quote unquote crazy amount of money, you should be able to make money to cover the expenses of the podcast at 30,000 downloads. Like it's a no brainer, right? And so there, Captivate is there, Transistor is there. And I really don't know why the company chose to still be doing that because like a lot of persons complain about it and well, maybe their customers are just different.
Yeah, they're gonna do it as long as people paying for it.
Yeah, okay, people are
Until
paying for it. Yeah,
yeah, until the market, until people walk away. And what happens is people are creatures of habit. So if they're accustomed
yeah,
to doing something, they're gonna continue with it, even if there's a better alternative. But it's easier to go with the one that than to try to learn something else kind of mentality.
yeah,
For
yeah,
me, it was, I wanted to get more content out. I wanted to be able to, like, now we're at the place where we're producing, not over the summer, but where we were producing 6 podcasts a week. Right. So I was doing that amount, and we're going to ramp that back up in September. So now we're we're
wow,
we're back to the place where we're ramping up, where we're doing more interviews, where we're like, this, my month of August calendar is crazy, because I need to get to the place where we're doing 6 interviews. We're uploading 6 interviews a week. Um, some interviews do well, some don't, and it's not a matter of how I market, or a matter of it's just there's a lot of things that take into consideration.
yeah, a lot of
But
factors.
once they're out there, some interviews will have better long shelf life. So a person,
Yeah,
I may interview you
evergreen.
today about
Yeah,
the evergreen conversation. So
yeah,
um don't worry. I think sometimes people don't put out, they're like, I'm not going to produce that much content because I want people to listen to the last episode. It doesn't matter if you're producing great content. People may circle back around to it, right?
yeah,
You may, and you can't worry about having your audience, your guests promote for you. You have to have your own systems of promotion, and
yeah,
and really
Yeah.
stand in what it is that you want what it is that you want to give to the world. Podcasting is lonely.
It is.
It's like you turn on these microphones. If you don't have a big production team, I'm not talking about people that have a big production team, but you don't have a team, you don't have, like, when you finish, you have to do all of your artwork yourself. You have to do all of the social media stuff yourself, letting the guests know that the podcast is available.
Quick break. Before we continue, I'd love to invite you to join the My Podcast Story newsletter. Each week, I share highlights from our guest stories, behind the scenes podcasting tips, and resources to help you grow your own show. You can sign up at mypodcaststory.com/join. That is mypodcaststory.com/join. Now, let's get back to the episode.
Right.
Yeah.
And then you go on. That's why I don't look at metrics. I don't really look at how my podcast, when I stopped doing that, I became better at podcasting.
Yeah. Because what happens is that when you are no longer focused on the numbers, right? Of course, getting great numbers is nice and good. When you're no longer focused on the numbers, your brain needs something to focus on. And so it's like, okay, let me focus on the podcast. Let me do and make shows that I enjoy and I love. And so they then realize that you do interviews and you're like, yeah, that interview was a blast, right? Even before you release the episode. Like I learned a lot, talking to that guest. That story was really inspiring, and I'm really glad I had that conversation with that guest, right? And so eventually it rubs off on the listeners, because when they're listening to you, they're like, yeah, there's this it's there. It's not something people can put a touch to, but they know that, oh yeah, this podcaster is just, is having fun, right? In a good way, right? Like he's not just recording another podcast episode. Yeah.
And that's important. That's
Yeah.
important. Another thing I would like to touch on, being that we are talking about podcasts,
Okay.
is there's a philosophy that most people who has a business to start the podcast aligned with the business. And in marketing, this podcast is at the top of the funnel in leads, right? So you use your podcast as a lead magnet to your business. That philosophy is okay. But what I find is if I'm talking to an audience and I build an audience, whether it's an audience of 10, or an audience of 100, or an audience of 10,000, and I'm always selling, at some point it's going to feel a little seedy, right?
Yeah.
So
Like,
although if you're starting a podcast to connect to your business, talk about the nuances of your business, not necessarily your business to sell. Like, I have this product and I'm always going to just push you down my funnel. That's not real great conversations to have. We started our podcast without any products in mind, without any coaching in mind. I just wanted to bring great information to communities. Me, as being a serial entrepreneur who has failed in business, who have had success in business, wanted to really give conversations to people about business, things that they're probably not thinking about, because I can come from a perspective, being that I was that I am an entrepreneur, and I can ask questions that the average person who's not in business or haven't been in business won't ask. Same thing with if I'm having a neuroscience conversation. I'm a mindfulness and yoga instructor. If I'm having a conversation with someone in marketing, I have several certifications in marketing. Now with AI, I'm an avid study of AI, so I can have those conversations. So the conversations, I really try to stay with topics that I can get deep conversations in. Because I want the person to walk away feeling as if they sat in a master's class and they were able to get information without having to pay for it. That's tangible and useful in the moment.
Yeah, I think one of the things I love, the approach I love in terms of marketing, is curiosity marketing, right? People do business with the people they know, they like, and trust. And the thing is, we've been talking about 20 minutes, right? We've been having a chat, right? I'm not trying to sell anything to you, not trying to sell anything to me. We're just having a conversation. You're sharing your story, right? In the course of this conversation, there are certain things you've mentioned. You didn't talk about it, but oh yeah, oh I do this, oh I'm a businessman, right? You didn't say, oh come do business with me, but and then someone listening is like, oh yeah, he's a businessman. What business does he do, right? And then the next episode, you give an example of a story and say, oh yeah, that's true. I remember when I was starting my first business, I did this, and you're not talking about them doing business with you, just like using that to illustrate one of the things you're talking about. And then, yeah, before you sooner or later, they keep listening to you. Why do I keep saying NaRon?
You know, that's fine. That's
Yeah,
fine. Don't worry.
he's into this, and because they know you, they like you, and they trust you, and because you've given them value, they're like, oh yeah, you say, yeah, that's true. I'm going to do this. Let me work with him, rather than, oh yeah, because I don't like people selling to me, right? If I go to a business or family gathering, I don't like somebody just say, yeah, I have this. We all know that family member who's always trying to get us to buy something, and we know how we dodge and escape.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we don't want to be that guy.
yeah, that's don't want to be the guy that everybody
Yeah.
runs away from when you walk in the room.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
say, can you give me a moment? I need to use the restroom. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, nah, I just
yeah,
escaped. I dodged the stray bullet. And that's what a lot of persons the thing is, if you have attention and you provide value, right? Because this is trust is built on value, right? Or the prediction of how much value I can get. And it's like, okay, this when I didn't know anything about business, he was the one who taught me about the framework on hiring. And I applied that framework and I was able to get my first team members, and everything has been going well. And I'm like, yeah, he has given me value in the past. He has given me value in the past and given me value in the past. And when it comes to, okay, paying $5,000, $10,000 for coaching, it's not really a big deal for me, because now I know that, right? I trust that you can deliver. And so the conversations we'll be having before the you paying is different from, oh yeah, I can change your life. And it's no, it's I didn't know you can change my life. Let's go straight to the point. Where do I put my credit card?
yeah, yeah. And that's like we're living in COVID, post COVID, stiff COVID. Everybody became a coach, and everybody had a program. And now, now that those loans and the government funding is over, the coaching market has changed again. Now the real coaches are still coaching, and everybody else who was COVID coaches went back to work.
Yeah,
Um, and that's and that's okay, right? It's okay.
yeah,
It's okay. It's okay. Because some people just do it for a hobby, but then you have some people like yourself and some people like me who are in this for the long haul. And it doesn't matter if we have
yeah,
bad quarters. It doesn't matter if things go off the rails. We turn on our microphones, we turn on our cameras, and we sit at those mics, and we push these conversations forward.
yeah. I think there was something I noticed, and I just wanted to share it, since we were having this conversation. And that is the bar, right, is very low in terms of, just showing up and dominating it. Because a lot of people are like, oh, what do I need to do so that in 2 weeks I'll just crush it? I'll be the top podcast. And I'm like, yeah, that's good. But the bar to actually dominate in the industry is really, really low. The thing is just show up consistently, put out a lot of content and show up consistently. Let people expect you and not be disappointed, right? If people expect that, oh, every Monday, every Friday you release an
Yeah.
episode, every month, I mean, things will happen, but it shouldn't be like, oh, you just vanished and stuff like that. And you notice that sooner or later you just become the top 1%, top 0.5%, because people trust that you will show up, and because you've been showing up, they will show up for you. Because a lot of times we expect audience and listeners to show up for us when we've not even we've not showed up, right? So we've not even done this thing for 2 3 months without missing, and we're like, oh yeah, nobody's listening. Why are they not listening? And I'm like, no, you have to be in business, right?
Yeah, and look at this as not a hobby. And I'm glad that you used that the bar is so low, because what winds up happening if you get into any business out of competition instead of creativity, you start to compete against the old you, right? And we have, like, in podcasts, ambulance chasers, people that just always chasing the news topic, and they want to be, I'm the first one who broke this, I'm the first one who, and like they want credit for things that nobody cares about, because once someone may know that we're doing this interview and they say, oh, NaRon is on the Wisdom podcast, right? And it's like, I broke it first. I told you that he was on there. All right, so now what? Right, so now you're arguing with other podcasters because you want the
Yeah,
credit for something. No, like, but if you lead with creativity, doesn't matter if you're first to market or if you're last to market, as long as you're what you do. Elon Musk didn't invent the first car. He wasn't the first one that thought about electric cars, but he was the best.
yeah,
Apple wasn't the first phone, all right? But they took
yeah,
cell phones to another level. And we don't have the first podcast, but we're consistent and we're taking podcasts into another level. and for what it is that we can. And I'm honored to even be on your podcast talking about podcasts.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot to me. When you just mentioned that, recently I'll look at some channels and I'll see certain things they'll talk about and they'll go viral, like millions of views, right? And I'm like, and then I just started asking myself that the question isn't necessarily how much numbers or persons we want to reach. The question is what depth of value do we want to give, right? Right? Like in terms of, do we just want to get the listens for the listen's sake, or do we actually want to like touch someone's life, right? Since we're in the business and in the education industry, right? It influences the kind of topics we go after, right? We're like, okay, how would this, at the end of this episode, what will be the transformation, right? And so when you start asking that questions, you're like, oh, if I talk about this episode on how this and this, and I mean, it will go viral, but I mean, what will be the transformation? I mean, no, that's not what I want. And so it influences what you decide to say. Okay, yeah, this is the interview I want to do, and this is the interview I don't want to do.
Yeah, and that's a key point. I've been a preacher since I was 24. I'll be 50 next month. And
Oh,
my
congrats!
marketing mind.
Happy birthday in advance.
Yeah, thank you. My marketing mind goes into this story that is captured about Jesus. In the beginning of his ministry, he has thousands of people following him. And then when he talks about his core topic, his topic of influence, said, "Those who follow me," and it gets into into that, and that's a whole spiritual thing. But when he turns around, only 12 people left. Thousands of people were with him, and he gives his topic of influence, turns around, and only 12 people left. And he says to those 12 people, "Are you going to leave too?" And they're like, "Nah, we like your message." I'd rather have 12 people that like the message. And it said he trained the 12.
Wow! And all it
And,
took was for those 12 people to reach out to another set, and then another set,
and
another set.
12,
That was because the depth in which he touched those persons wasn't just ephemeral. It wasn't surface. It was like, he touched them and he touched them deeply. Right?
and they said they turned the world upside down. So
Yeah.
if you're
Yeah.
listening and you have a
Yeah.
podcast and you have 12 listeners, and pour into those 12. You got 10 listeners, pour into that 10. Speak to them as if you have 10,000 listeners. And the more depth you give them, that 12 will increase. And not like so when you buy flowers and you put flowers in water, they stand up immediately. But when you plant a tree,
Yeah, sometimes you begin to question, are you sure I should not just exhume the seed and see if it's dead or alive? But you don't do that. You just have to like have faith that, oh man, at the appropriate time it's going to spring forth.
Yeah, the tree grows without us seeing it. And the problem is, see that thing spring up, right? That flower to spring up as soon as you put it in the water. But the flower, we already know when we put the flower in the water that the flower is eventually going to die. When we plant the seed in the ground, we don't see the movement, and we don't know when, but we do know that we planted that seed in the ground. And the growth is underneath and is not visible. But eventually we look out the window and damn, the damn bamboo tree is real high, ain't it?
Just right. Right. And I feel that a lot of persons sabotage themselves, right? I did this too, right? Before now I'm consistent. I'm like getting to 100 episodes. I would start an episode, I'll release two episodes, and I'm like, oh, I didn't go viral, nobody's listening, and then I'll stop for 4 months, right? And every time I started again, right, I would actually be planting a new seed. In my head, I was like, oh, I'm continuing the podcast. It's not the same podcast. Every time I started, I left for 6 months. I come back, right, and I do 2 episodes, and then I'll disappear. I do 3 episodes. It was a new podcast. I was planting a new seed and a new seed, and eventually now I had to. It took me years, but I was like, okay, yeah, let me start a podcast where I'm going to talk about things that I love to talk about. A podcast for me, a podcast I wish someone made for me, right? And then I'll promote it to the world, and hopefully there are people like me and they get to listen to the podcast.
It's your topic of influence. And usually the best topics of influence, being that this is podcast for podcasters, the best topic of influence is stuff that you love to talk about, not stuff that you're curious about. If you're gonna listen to stuff that if you're going to be in the podcast world with stuff that you're curious about, listen to podcasts that you're curious about. If you're going to impact the world, talk about stuff that you're interested in, because that excitement comes through the microphone. That excitement comes through the microphone.
Yeah. I was about to ask you a follow-up question before we dropped some sound bites and value bomb for the listeners. It's very important. I feel like almost everything in life starts with the mind and is influenced with the mind, right? And the thing that the movie that really solidified the idea of mind is the movie by Christopher Nolan, Inception. I don't know if you watched it.
Section?
Inception. It's
Inception. Oh, yes,
yeah,
yes,
you
yes,
watched it,
yes,
right?
yes,
Okay. Where
yes.
they wanted to sabotage the man, and all they needed to do was to plant an idea in his head, right? That was all they needed to do. And so the same thing, right? People who go to war, people who go it starts with it's a little idea, right? Whether it's a bad idea, whether it's a good idea. People who say they want to make a big invention to really change the world. Start with an idea, right? The people who made that plane, they're like, oh yeah, why can't man fly? We should fly, right? A little idea, and then they started, and then the idea go. And so the same thing, it's very important, because sometimes when people talk about the mindset, like, oh no, this podcasting is not really the mind. What are you people talking about, right? It's the mind, because before I started, right, I didn't have I didn't have the tools. But when I started and I made it that, oh, I'm going to do the podcast regardless of notes, right? I'm going to show up whether the audio sounds terrible. I'm going to do what I can do with what I have. I realized that I started showing up consistently. Now it wasn't a question of, despite the circumstances, I still got the stuff done, because it didn't matter, right? That's, oh, I didn't have, there was no light, my internet connection was bad. I'll still find a way to do it. But if you don't want to do it, right, you would always find valid reasons why you cannot do it. Yeah.
So I'm right. I just wrote a book, and it's coming out this fall, and it's called Internal Awakening.
Okay.
No, Awakening I Am. Internal Awakening Awakening I Am. Internal Awakening in the digital age, or in the AI age.
Okay, Internal Awakening is the subtitle.
Yeah, subtitle, Internal Awakening in the AI age. And it's talking about mindset. How we prompt the way that we think is going to produce the fruit that we give to the world. So in your case in point, when you were talking about microphones, oh, my microphone is bad, or my internet connection is bad. So if I go to the podcast and I say, oh, man, I don't even know if I should be recording this show today. I'm not gonna persist, because I already planted those seeds out, right? But if I go to the thing, and I'm like, man, I'm excited about this podcast today, and I know that I have to get more equipment, but I'm gonna record, and I'm, our podcast is gonna be number one. It doesn't matter where we're starting at, but we're gonna keep going. We're gonna get past it. We're gonna get more stuff. I don't know where it's gonna come from, but I'm gonna get it, and I'm going to be persistent. And then all of my guests, I'm explaining to them, hey, my internet might go out, my lighting might be bad, but we're gonna have a great conversation, and people are gonna appreciate that. And some people are gonna turn off, but some people are gonna press on. Some people are gonna maybe even donate me some stuff, but I'm gonna be there and I'm gonna do it. That's the mindset of a winner. And there's a real thing called loser's mentality and a winner's mentality, and that's all starts within the invisible portion. I wrote I did a course called The Mindful Marketer, and it's on Listenable. The Mindful Marketer is a course that I did some years ago, and it talks about the invisible branding. So branding is the thing that we see tangibly, outwardly, the logo, the person in front, and all those other things. But the invisible branding is what we feel when we come across the podcast, or when we come across the host, or when we come across the person. And we should take that into consideration, because what we're giving off is a feeling. We're giving off an emotion. And I want the people that are listening to this to understand that don't get behind that microphone with bad energy, because people will feel it.
Yeah. Well, and you've been doing the podcast for 6 years now. And I'm curious, in terms of the past 6 years, what would you say is like a lesson you learned from probably an experiment that didn't go as planned, or taught you something really invaluable?
Get away from it as quickly as possible. Don't lie. I learned not to lie to myself. Because you can get stuck in being stubborn. So don't get stuck on being stubborn. Like if it doesn't look appealing to you, then it's not appealing in the world. Like
Yeah.
there was stuff that I produced and put out, and I was like, that don't really look good, but I have to work with what I have. So if it's not appealing to me, it's not appealing to the world. But how do I become appealing? Like I'm not at by any means any of the major podcasts that has production and all that stuff behind it. I'm not at their level, but I don't not look at my stuff and want it to look like theirs. I want my stuff to look just as good as theirs. I want my stuff to sound just as good as theirs. I want my questions to be hard hitting just as good as theirs. Just because I don't have that kind of audience or that kind of financial backing doesn't mean that I don't want to put out a great product.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that idea. Quickly, I just want us to, because I always love, some persons are curious, and I've had different guests and more like podcasters, because podcasters, the people I interview on the podcast, I've had them come on the podcast and they share their behind the scenes, their tools, so the workflows, some of the things they use, and I've had some crazy ideas in terms of, oh yeah, I mean, I've been doing this thing manually. Well, I could just automate this. Thank you for sharing it. Right. So what is the workflow? How does your podcast get made now? Like from idea down to publishing?
So I use Podmatch to find my guests, and then I get a lot of emails from people that want to guest on the show.
Okay.
So, but Podmatch saved me. I use Descript for editing.
Okay.
I have a 4K Net Geo mic and camera, my laptop.
Okay.
I like the white space behind it. I used to use a green screen.
Yeah.
Um,
But
but
this is nice, and it's, what's the
yeah,
word? I don't want to use nice so that it doesn't look generic. It doesn't sound generic. It's, how it doesn't stand that it's clean, simple, and it's
it's
just
clean.
minimal,
Yeah,
right? Yeah. It doesn't like,
yeah.
oh, look at me, draw my attention to myself.
Yeah. I used to
Yeah.
have like the logos and all of that stuff on the podcast. And now I don't do that. So I try to keep everything simple. I used to have soundboards and do all that other stuff. I don't do that because my
Yeah.
podcast is only what I've learned over the 6 years is who do I want to be the center of the conversation. I want the guest to
Okay.
be the center of the conversation. So the less I attract to me, the more I push
Yeah.
towards the
You
guest.
make
Now, if
them
it
the
was a
star. You
solo
give
show,
them the spotlight.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. If it was a solo show, it would be different. Then I would have all of the glitz and glamour that's necessarily to highlight me.
Yeah.
But if I'm going to make, and then and I changed from sit at the feet of the masters. I still say that, but we have conversations that evolve lives. So if our conversation is evolving a life, someone else's life, it can't be centered around me. So my
Yeah.
podcast is very, very simplistic. And again, I went from having all of the other things, the green screens and
Yeah.
the to really, really having a really intimate conversation.
What
And
do
I
you
want
what do you use for recording the interviews? You didn't mention that. You use the script for editing, but what do you use for recording?
Descript now allows you to record into Descript
Okay.
directly, and it
Okay.
was a little wonky. I lost some episodes because I went through the beta with them. So I
Yeah.
lost episodes because it wasn't that good as they was going through it, but they've gotten a lot better. And the reason why I like to record directly there is because as soon as I finish recording, I can go back to the rooms and start editing.
Yeah.
I find that the faster I get to the editing process, the better I am at putting up the shows. So
Yeah.
I use Descript, and Descript, like Riverside, like all of these platforms are basically
Yeah.
mirroring one another.
Yeah.
They make the
Yeah.
clip
Yeah.
more, yeah, right. So
Yeah.
it's just what are you comfortable with using? Because they all kind of do the
Yeah.
same. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I noticed that this script, they put this thing called underload. And then
yeah,
about a couple of months after, I'm seeing Riverside decided to put in something called co-creator. And I'm like,
yeah.
I see what you guys are doing there.
Yeah,
Ah,
they all sit around the table and like, all right, this is what we're going to be doing, because I mean,
yeah,
at some part is about competition, right? Because but they understand that they're sharing the market. So
yeah, yeah,
if your competitor is just as good as you, if the person that's in the same industry is just as good as you, you're driving each other. And that's what we want to do. We want to drive each other.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, so you use the script for editing, and
Hmm.
after the editing, what do you, you know, what's the host you upload to? Would you do marketing,
Spreaker.
post production, and all those things? Okay.
I do Spreaker
Okay.
as a host, and they distribute to Apple, Spotify. So we're on all of the major iHeart. Well, Spreaker just got purchased by iHeartRadio, so it's iHeart
Wow.
Spreaker.
Oh, yeah.
So we start from there, and then the distribution goes out from there. Now I'm building up our YouTube page, and I just started like branding the YouTube.
Yeah.
And we do clips throughout the week. We're going to get into blogging. What I would advise to people is not to try to do everything at one time. Even if you want to blog, if you're not going to be consistent in it, don't do it. Because when I first started, I was like, oh, I want to blog. So I started blogging, but if I'm not going to be consistent in it. So now that I know I want to blog, that I know I want to do all these other things, I'm finishing one thing first, which is the YouTube page, and making sure that the YouTube is uniformed and everything is going crisp and clear. So when a person sees or goes to the YouTube page or come across it, it synchronizes with the podcast. And then now we're going to have our website and app that we're developing that's going to help to produce our digital blueprint. And all of those things are going to look.
That's it for today's episode of my podcast story. I hope you enjoyed listening to this journey as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. If you found value in today's episode, make sure to subscribe and leave a review. It really helps others discover the show. And don't forget to join the newsletter at mypodcaststory.com/join for more stories and podcasting insights. Until next time, keep telling your story because someone out there needs to hear it.